Hello everybody, welcome back. Today we're going to talk about keg packaging and dispensing. So Keg Basics, beer packaging that allows for dispensing of draft beer. So it's one of the most common packages that beer is going to be packaged into and dispensed from. It typically allows for closed transfers by pressure, so it would be a pressure difference between your vessel and the keg itself. Sizes can range, if you're talking about Sankey kegs, they can range from a 6 barrel, which is 5.16 gallons, all the way up to a half barrel, which is 15.5 gallons. Some other kegs have slightly smaller and slightly different values, including those that are measured by the metric system. The connections vary by country, but here in the States, most common is going to be the Sankey Type D. Types of kegs, Sankey is going to be the most used in this country and I think worldwide as well, but there are many different types of couplers that fit into the Sankey keg itself. And the Sankey keg itself is the best design that we've been able to come up with so far that allows for easy dispensing of draft beer. Next keg we've got here is the Cornelius keg, and you're going to see this is kind of a leftover from the soft drink beverage industry. They're going to have a very large opening at the top that used to be for adding syrups, a lot of other things that soda companies may add to their beverage. And it has two separate posts, and one side is gas, one side is liquid. Within those posts, there are also two different types of locking mechanisms. There's a ball lock, which is a kind of like a quick disconnect type system, and then there's also a pin locks, which you push down and slide onto these little locking pins. And then we've got the Hoff-Stevens keg, very poor design that's lost favor worldwide, and the Golden Gate keg, really not used anymore, and then a Firkin cask, which is really starting, sorry there's a little spider right in front of me there, starting to have a resurgence with the resurgence of real ale, the movement in Britain, Camera. People are using Firkins a little more now, and it's kind of more of a novelty, or maybe not necessarily a gimmick. It does allow for some traditional ales, but starting to pick on a little bit here in the States. And we can see a cutaway here of a Sankey keg. You can see here you've got your handles up here, your valve that the spear fits into. And I've got an example spear here as well that I've had removed from a keg that actually blew open. And of course you see how far down to the bottom that spear goes to help prevent as much waste as possible. And then you've got your bottom chimes in which the keg sits. Now, the spear itself does have a few parts in general. You've got your ball valve right here seated within that rubber gasket there. You've got a spring that helps hold that ball valve into place. You've got another gasket here that seals the spear into the keg. And then there is a locking ring that holds this spear into a little groove inside of the bung on the keg itself. As you can see, there's not a whole lot to it, and when you pull them out, you can look inside the keg. Once you take this out, there's not a whole lot to the keg itself. It's a very simple design and allows for ease of use for a number of users. And we can see here, this is a Firkin, and you'll see some fun videos on YouTube of people trying to tap a Firkin. I've never tapped one or attempted to tap one myself. I'm not sure I would want to try. It looks to be kind of finicky. And if you've seen many of the videos of people trying to tap one and just blowing beer all over the place, looks fun. You want to make sure that you either have minimal pressure, because this is really designed just for a gravity feed, or a hand pump that really is mechanical action of pulling the beer out of the cask. And so you have here the different couplers of the Sankey design. So the most common is going to be the D, the Sankey D system in this country. We've got a few other couplers that you won't see unless you import beer from another country or you go and live in Europe or somewhere else. Just to know that they exist would be enough. The D system is the one you're going to want to be familiar with inside and out, backwards and forwards. Something that has started to develop is the idea of plastic one-way kegs. And basically it's just a large PET bottle with a Sankey type connector on top. And the idea is that you only have to worry about logistics one way. Plastic, specifically PET, kind of like your soda bottles, but much thicker. They come clean and pressurized, usually with nitrogen. I doubt that the companies that provide them are going to pressurize them with carbon dioxide. They're most likely going to be nitrogen. It's a cheaper gas. They come in various sizes, but they almost exclusively come in metric sizes because a lot of these companies are based in Europe that produce these kegs. So you're going to find 20-liter sizes that are going to be close to our sixtel size. Sankey keg couplers, Sankey D keg couplers that aren't Micromatic brand, sometimes the coupler doesn't fully engage their system. Sometimes you can have some foaming issues based on your coupler if you use a cheap generic coupler. The advantage and disadvantage, you kind of got away in one hand almost equal. The advantage is there's no return logistics. You don't have to track your keg, you don't have to worry about losing your stainless investment. The issue is they can be costly. The cheapest, when we were kind of weighing the idea here at Henderson of maybe using them for farther distribution accounts, the cheapest I could get them down to was $17 in the door each. And that might not sound like a lot, but that can significantly erode your margins on distribution beer, even with, if you take into mind the investment that you would need for stainless kegs and then the cost of return logistics. $17 a keg just doesn't quite make it there. In our opinion, for our business model, it just didn't make sense for us. I wish it would, just because it's kind of nice just to send a keg, deliver it, and be done with it thereafter. And the idea is that the retailer would then depressurize it. Of course, there's a valve with directions so that the retailer can depressurize it and then throw it in the recycle bin. The likelihood that that is going to happen every single time probably is pretty low. Most of these kegs probably do end up in the landfill, and then you really have something to contend with on your conscience and carbon footprint. Do you really want to contribute to single-use plastic waste in such a significant manner? It's a fair amount of plastic that goes into making these. And if your retailers don't have the opportunity to recycle, or just don't out of, it's just easier to throw stuff in the trash, then there's something that we're contributing to, and that's something to think about as well. And I don't think you can really force people to recycle. Like, you can't have my beer unless you recycle this keg. That's kind of silly. Yeah. So, filling kegs. So we've got all our beer. We've got it finished. It's ready. It's carbonated. We need to package it. So we need to fill kegs. How do we do that? Counter pressure fill is ideal. I do not recommend pulling a spear on a keg and filling with atmosphere. I never recommend pulling a spear on a keg unless you need to inspect the keg if you're having issues, or to verify cleaning of your keg cleaner. Even if you have to pressure fill with very low pressures, that's the way to do it. Hook up your coupler and push with, it doesn't take much more than a PSI of pressure difference, whether that be 0 on your keg and 1 on your tank. Just doesn't take much. But if you're moving cold carbonated beer, counter pressure filling is the best way to do it, and you're going to want to keep head pressure on both of your vessels, so the keg and your bright tank or uni tank or fermenter, whatever you're filling from. You want to keep your head pressure on both above the equilibrium pressure for your carbonation in your beer to make sure you don't really knock out too much carbonation. And when you start filling, you can imagine when you're filling an empty vessel, there's going to be some splash. There's going to be a significant mechanical agitation. And to prevent that at the beginning while the keg is lower in volume, you'll want to start your fill a little slower. Just barely crack your valve on the top of your coupler and just barely let out some of that pressure in that keg. That way your fill is slow at first. And as you start to fill up, you can start to increase your speed because there's a lot less mechanical agitation. You've got a fair amount of beer going into that already in that keg. So modified couplers are used to fill kegs. We've got a picture of one here, and I've also brought one in for us to take a look at. So what we've got here is one of our well-used keg filler couplers, I should say. And what we have is a coupler that we've taken off the top. We've removed the one-way valve, the little ball valve that was in there, and removed the one-way valve that was there keeping liquid out of the gas line. And we've installed beer line ball valves and a little hose to direct the waste, a little foam waste into a bucket, and a tri-clamp fitting on top so we can connect our hose from our tank. And so that couples to your keg spear. And you can see the little grooves right there. You want to work them in, turn it tight, and engage, and you're ready to go. And that will fill, and you'll want to make sure all your valves are closed at first when you engage. Open your liquid first, and if there is a slight pressure difference that's left in your keg, it will start to fill your keg. And you just want to crack your gas outlet a little bit until you start to hear some gas flowing out, and that is the sound of that beer pushing out that pressure. Just enough for a slow fill, and you can kind of tell on the side of your keg, you can start to see the condensation start to work up, and you can also feel the coldness of the beer in your keg to get an idea of how quickly you're filling your keg. Advantage one for the PET kegs, the plastic kegs, they're see-through. You can see exactly how quickly you're filling your keg. Here you can see here another picture of the modified coupler. So cleaning kegs. Before we fill the kegs, slightly out of order here, but before we fill the kegs we want to make sure they're clean, sanitized, and pressurized with CO2 or nitrogen if you have a nitrogen system. Some kind of inert gas that you're going to make sure there's no oxygen in your keg. So typically you're going to run a similar CIP process as tanks. You're going to purge the keg. If there's any remaining beer in it, you want to get it all out. Then you're going to add a rinse, so some water, rinse anything that may be there, rinse it out, and you're going to push that out with some pressurized gas. You're going to run a caustic or acid depending on what your protocol calls for, and a rinse. We're going to rinse all that chemical out, and then we're going to sanitize, and that's going to be whatever sanitizer you use. I highly recommend peroxyacetic acid, and we're going to purge out the remainder of that sanitizer, and then we're going to pressurize. The pressurization step helps. Well, you could probably do a last little purge of oxygen if you use compressed air to push to operate your keg cleaner, but otherwise that allows for counter pressure filling. If you store your kegs clean and pressurized, you're ready to go when it's keg day. So a manual cleaner are very labor intensive. So every single step you have to turn valves, you have to turn things, you got to turn pump on, turn the pump off. It's manually intensive. It requires constant attention, but it's cheap. You know, you can make one relatively cheap. You just need pumps, valves, tees, and all kinds of piping and hoses. A semi-automatic keg cleaner basically allows you to hook up 1, 2, 3, or 4, whatever head size your cleaner is. Hook up those kegs, push a button, walk away, and whatever time that is preset on your machine, come back and you've got clean kegs ready for you. The keg washer may or may not have a pressurization step. If it doesn't, just add another step right at the end once you take the kegs off of your keg washer, basically. Keg cleaning and filling lines. So these are fun. For breweries that have a whole lot of money or a significant investment, there are keg cleaning and filling lines where an operator stands on one end, throws dirty kegs onto a conveyor belt. It goes through the process, it cleans, it purges, it does everything, it fills, and out pops a clean filled keg on the other side, waiting for someone to put a keg collar on it, slap a lid on it, and put it on a pallet. How great would that be? You can run that with 2 people and fill, Lord knows how many kegs per hour that'll fill. You won't find any one of those around here. Dispensing draft beer. We'll cover this on part 2 of the lecture. Thank you.